Hello, everybody. Thanks for listening to the Leon LeGray podcast. I am your host, Leon, back with the Leon LeGray podcast, a short episode, episode 104. So this time I want to go ahead and tell you about my experiences with podcasting now, since now I've been doing podcasting for a while. I would say now 2 years on my podcast. And with the title that I have on top, I think it's going to be obvious where it's going to go, and this is kind of my short story why I've gone through this and decided to make a switch. So let's go ahead and get right on to the podcast here, and this is going to be very, very different from any news articles, things like that I've done in the past. And one thing I will say is that when it came to me using a free platform like Anchor, you know that it's gonna be simple, and with Anchor, you are pretty much naive to just use a free hosting platform. And that's for I that's been using Anchor since 2018, and making the switch for me was not easy, because you know that you feel very, very comfortable in staying in platform, and decide to keep it that way, the way you've been doing it. And plus, you know that as for someone that's been podcasting for 2 years on my show, I figured, okay, let me just go ahead and stick with what I know, what I have here on me right now. And to me, that was something I took things for granted, and decided to keep on at it with a podcast hosting provider, a podcast hosting provider I've been comfortable for now 2 years. So yeah, so let me just go ahead and give you this quick story of why I've continued Anchor from here too, instead of going through a pod hosting provider such as Podbean. So here we go. And also, everybody, if you are brand new to the show, make sure take the time to like, review on, and whatever, right? So go ahead and do that for me if you are interested. So here we go. I was using the Anchor service for 2 years. I've enjoyed the ride since. Anchor was recommended to me from a friend of mine. I enjoyed the service since over the times I got better doing many recordings over the last few years. The Anchor's interface made things easy for me when I started it. When it comes to making a free podcast in a free platform, nothing is free. From one YouTuber that said this well: if you're using a free product, guess what? You are the product, not the customer. He is right. As someone that was foolish not to do research on hosting, I did the easy way out. So there it was right there too. And I have to agree 100% on the fact that I took the easier way out, doing creating my platform, starting with Anchor, which wasn't too bad. I will say this at first too. Now, I don't want to take things out and say don't use the platform. I let all you users or listeners decide what the hell you want to do. I mean, that's up to you, all on the users. When it comes to free, a lot of the free stuff lacks a lot of things too. And that's where it's easy to notice things and a lot of features that you're not going to get with the paid services that you're going to get month to month. And this is what I noticed right there too. And nothing right there is free. And that's quite true too. I mean, I'm sure many people will disagree with me on the fact that using a free platform isn't so bad as it seems. But if you think about it too, you're never gonna get the quality of service that what you're gonna get with everything else. Like just to mention, Buzzsprout, LipSync, and all these hosting providers out there that has premium features that that's there for you as a podcaster. And Anchor was something that I enjoyed to ride um, for 2 years, ever since the summer of 2018. I liked it since, but now it's time to move on with a different platform. And one things I've noticed with Anchor, and I did some research with Anchor even before doing this recording. Anchor has been around since 2015, before it was bought out by Spotify. And I'm sure that Anchor is going to do a lot better now it was bought out with Spotify, which is great. And depends on who you talk to. Um, Anyone that you talk to is like, and they're gonna say, "Oh, I have the best experience with Anchor," and I'm sure you will start out well from the very beginning too. But what I've noticed with Anchor is that you do not have a lot of control, and the problem is that when I try to manually register uh, my podcast with other hosting providers, like for not hosting providers, excuse me, other listening platforms such as Radio Public or uh, Podcast Republic, iHeartRadio. One thing is that I had to verify my email. And what was the issue and what was the trouble with that was that it went through an Anchor email, which I did not know nothing about. And going through customer service back and forth was a lot of trouble for me too, because I normally don't go and talk with customer service. And so that was the point for me that I said, okay, why am I have to go through a lot of trouble now? And it's just a mess. And I'm just like, man, I don't understand this. And I know that iTunes was kind of challenging because the issue from that was that the artwork needed. I had to change the size of the artwork, and iTunes didn't like it. So I submitted the second time. That was easy peasy going on forward too. And one thing I did notice right there was that I did not see the individual stats on the iTunes account, or how do you call it, like the Apple account when you sign up for iTunes. iTunes partners and you try to look into the individual statistics and where people are listening to, if it's on iPhone or on iPod or whatever, right? And you don't ever see that. And the thing about that was that Anchor controls the stats, the total number of stats that that you see right there too. You cannot, and this is one thing that bugged me the most. And I wanted to see the stats on individual devices, and in Spotify, in Anchor, Spotify, whatever, right? They control the majority of the stats right there too. It even as a user, they control a lot what you cannot do, and that's what bugged me the most. And even especially with paid providers, you definitely have more control what you can uh, what you can see and who's listening to you too, and also that too. Even as a podcaster, I don't know that staying with Anchor would be good for the long run, and that's what I expected myself to do. Is probably let me see what the what's the benefits of the paid hosting providers. And so I checked around, looked around, and I thought, man, this was the best thing for me. I think either I go jump onto Buzzsprout, where a lot of these big podcasters like Pat Flynn mention, or the podcast Insightful, or podcast Simplified talks about. I figured maybe I'll just go ahead and join these hosting providers instead of using Anchor, because even a year ago they had limited features. And one of the things I've noticed is that you could not redirect your podcast anywhere else. It's like if your podcast was locked down and you could not switch platforms. But now I've noticed something funny. Well, like even yesterday, Thursday, when I was going through looking around things too, I've noticed that they started doing the redirect, and I think it's cool, great that they're doing that too. One thing I will say is that I will not take away out of this experience was that it was nice that Anchor. There's other Anchor users out there that definitely I've noticed did I did get some discoverabilities too, but I think over time is that I felt that I was very much lacking on discoverabilities. And the funny thing is that all the other podcasts I've been listening to on the Anchor platform, it was cool. It was nice to see other people that doing it too, but it was not in my interest too. And the topics, they weren't really interesting topics from other users. Like I know the one comedy podcast I did like was the In Laws podcast, which I still follow them, but man, it's been a while since I've listened to the In Laws podcast. If you've not heard of them, check them out. Pretty funny guys. Three brother-in-laws from San Antonio, Texas. So I definitely recommend checking them out. But anyways, don't want to try to go a little bit off the rails or just go a little bit off topic right here too on the hosting. Now, though were some people that I discovered from the Anchor platform now, and that's one thing I would never take that away, because I've discovered a brand new podcasters that I did not know, and that was cool. And I know a lot of people, their niche, like there were some niches that were interesting to listen to, but then others I'm like, I don't know. To me, I'm not like the kind of person that listen to devotional or inspirational podcasts. That's just not for me too. I mean, I like easy listening, things of that matter too. That in other or probably other things that piques my interest basically, which I like, which I really like too. But I will warn anybody that is signing up to Anchor, if you're a novice or a beginner, okay, that's fine right there. If you're not ready to make a full payment as of yet, or not ready to make the payment, that's fine. I can hear you on that as well, and that is cool. Now, one thing I will say with Anchor, that from the very beginning, I did sign up for the monetization on it, and I did earn some money on it. Then, however, over time, I've noticed one thing is that they weren't doing a lot of sponsorships, and it was just few incremental cents, and there was like a crossover podcasting sponsorships. Like for instance, I did one for the Tech Meme Ride Home. I did a sponsor for his podcast. It was a crossover, and that was cool. It wasn't too bad, and I do enjoy listening to the podcast, which it talks about technology, which that's what my show's about, is mostly about technology, really. And then the other one I cross-platformed with is the Space Pod podcasts, or Space News podcasts, excuse me. And so I enjoyed that one as well. That was really good. It was all about space news, things like that too. Though I don't listen to a lot of space news, but his content is really good to check out too. And if you're the kind of person that is into astronomy and space, by all means, take a listen to the Space News podcast. Really interesting insights about space. I did mention about space on a previous podcast, so about asteroids. If you've not heard about the asteroid news, yeah, good to check it out as well. And now the last thing I'll try to not to drag it too much too. I'll try to end it this way too. As much as I liked it too, and let me go ahead and get on with the earnings. The earnings were very small, very incremental, and plus the discoverability. It's definitely hard to get discoverability through Spotify Why I say that is that for one, since now Anchor has been bought by Spotify, and plus there's a lot more control going on through the spot team over at Spotify right now. And that was my main thing. I have to say, look, I didn't mind about the buyout with Spot from Spotify. Sure, good luck with them too, because at the end of the day, a company cannot survive on its own. And plus, with free hosting like that too. First of all, there's nothing for free, and the money has to come out from somewhere too. And I know that Spotify is making a killer amount of dough from artists and from podcasters everywhere else alike. So they have to pay the people over at Anchor too as well. Plus, I haven't even got any good amount of sponsorship, and the only sponsorship I received was the sponsorship from Anchor, right? And that was it. That was the only available sponsorship. I've done it for each and every episode, and for me, I'm definitely gonna go ahead and cut that out, and no more sponsorships from Anchor alone, because there was no benefit on doing that too. And then I also, my international friend from the UK, he does a photography podcast, and he had no monetization international, and it's been over a year now. And I know, and I get it that it takes time to have monetization available everywhere else too. Now, I don't want to put down any company that are trying to start up the hosting providing podcast hosting providers, and I get that too. But when it comes to it too, and I did some research when I checked on the guy's video, and I'll have the guy's video down in the show notes. So if anyone is interested in listening to this guy, he explains this really, really well. Is that free hosting platforms? What happens to them is that they do not last long, and what happens was that over time, and they only will last probably within a year or two, and that's it. And even though it's surprising that Anchor has lasted this long as a hosting provider, the question is, how the hell are they getting money right now? I'm sure Spotify is paying Anchor, yeah, but I'm sure like with the Anchor app, a lot of people have downloaded the app, and they can record everywhere else, and that's cool, and that's fine. But I won't take that away from them as well. Now, thing is though, they've pretty much abandoned the web users, or the desktop users, I would say, is that they've added tags on the mobile side, and the only reason they did it so that way listeners can discover you through Spotify. And I got some discoverabilities through Spotify over at these Spotify analytics, and the only way you can find out your listenership is through Spotify, and Spotify controls Anchor, and plus you cannot even get the stats from Apple or Stitcher, and first of all, that's not even possible. And I am saying this right here too as well, was that I've had a hard time finding out who was listening to me, and I know they have stats down the bottom right there too, down below, but at the end of the day, you do not have the full control right there too, because right now the system on that platform is so centralized right now too, and there was no reason for me to stay on Spotify, and I know that with Spotify they can control that platform, and they can control that data, and that's what's scary about the whole thing too. As much as I would say is that Spotify has a huge library of artists and podcasters, but one thing I will put down is that they've had huge scandals over the past couple years, and there was one thing I will go ahead and note this down as well, is that there's been a big scandal from Spotify back in 2015, and now and it's because of data sharing and collecting a lot of data from its users, and also from that they've been collecting data via the mobile. And when that comes to via the mobile, that's very, very dangerous to be collecting data on what music you've been listening to, what things you've been talking to your buddies. It's not just the music data they collect. They collect everything. And you thought Facebook was this bad? Yeah. But let me tell you this way. Both Facebook and Spotify are pretty bad. And plus, it's pretty centralized too. And this is why I don't support big tech. And the only reason I have an account with Spotify is because I can track my analytics who's listening to me on Spotify. And plus, I do like to give people the choice, and a lot of people are paying a monthly service to take away the ads. And sure, that's fine and all because nobody wants to listen to ads all the time. That's cool. And that was one of the main reasons I look at Spotify today, and I think Spotify right now in the music world is definitely having way too much control. And I know that's a big statement, but I think that's true though, and I don't think a lot of people know about what's going on right there too. And many times out of 10, I look at these platforms, uh, but you definitely know that where these platforms are heading to. And look, all these streaming companies like Tidal, Dweeber, I don't know how they operate, and I don't know if they have podcast support as well. I know that they it gives does give gives them an opportunity for artists to reach out to other listeners and give them other opportunities, which is actually pretty good. Now I have not played around with Tidal or Dweeber, never before, and I probably will try to give them a shot and try to see how they are, things like that too. And I'm sure they probably will do the same thing as well, as far as data collection is concerned, and absolutely too. But I'm sure that the average listener just doesn't care about the privacy aspect too much. Who knows? Count me wrong on it. Let me know if you're the kind of person that doesn't care. If you do care, please, I'd like to know. And your comments is always welcome, absolutely too. So that was one of the main reasons that I decided I'm gonna go for Podbean. And after all the hosting providers, I figured, Podbean is very reasonable. I can post all my audio pretty much unlimited, and I can just do that from here too. I mean, I don't do video because I don't have the space for my computer to have to put video after video into my hard drive, and and I know audio right now is very easy to do, and I enjoy doing audio. So that being said, I'm gonna go ahead and continue on podcasting through Podbeam. The interface looks very simple, doesn't look really hard, and I'm going to continue using Podbeam whatsoever too. And as far as it is, I will not tell anybody what to do. So if you want to use Anchor, you can go ahead and all you like right there too. So I will say that there are a couple limitations that will be stripped away from what you'll see in the paid plans, of course. Now, I did start my service on Podbeam yesterday for 30 days, which is great. So I can give it a try, and if I like it, then I'll continue on forward. So that'll be good moving on forward. So I'd like to see and get the feel of how the platform works for me too, which I would love to do, pretty much. So, anyways, let me not drag this recording way too long than I have to, because I know that's something I do tend to do a lot is drag on the recording every single time. Anyways, folks, I hope you enjoyed this little commentary. Let me know what you think. If you've used Anchor in the past, I hope you got something out of this, because as far as it goes, I'm sticking with paid service with Podbeam. I think Podbeam is a wonderful choice, and I hope now going through this experience, I'm sure that I could have gone through Buzzsprout or Lip Sync, but I know that the plans and the pricing wasn't as reasonable, and plus it may have had hurt my budget over time, and I don't even know how many people are listening to me out there too. And plus, you would have to have a lot more listenerships and downloads to have people to listen to you. So that's why. So as far as everything goes, I love the interface, and plus, what's great about Podbeam is Podbeam does give you an option if you want to stream live or do a live stream via audio, that you most certainly can too. Now, the other extra feature I will mention is the $30 a month plan, which gives you the option for video and audio. And why this is good is, if let's say if you're a YouTuber, right? And if you are a YouTuber, then you can post your video not just on Podbean, but over on YouTube as well. Now, since for me, however, I like the audio option only, so that's something I will take right there too. Now, they have a business plan for $100 a month. Now, let's say, for example, if you have a big business, then that's going to be a good option for you as well. So that's something, if you plan on doing a business, go right ahead. Now, I know they have a lot more features. Now, I don't have everything right in front of me too, and I know that all the features does a good job too. Plus, I can definitely see the analytics in real time, and I like the stats and analytics, which is very, very reliable, and that's a positive for me. Which, on the other hand, unlike Anchor, the analytics isn't up to date, and plus I don't, and my listenership has dropped dramatically, as I've noticed right there, because I felt that they've been working their way into dipping me under the ship, and which I don't like about that too. And the listenership right there, sure, I've got a huge rise to it ever since the massive unemployment that's been happening all over the world. So in a way, the whole rise, that was a good blessing, that I had a huge massive listenership. But at the end of the day, I don't think their system works that well, and having to reach over your podcast over to everyone, it's not going to be a great idea for the long run if you decided to go pro. Now, as a novice and a beginner, I started up okay. Now, as far as their system is not as robust, and that's something I got so frustrated, is that I did not have full control with Anchor. And then again, I wish them luck moving on forward. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Like I've said from the very beginning, if you have iTunes, make sure to leave a review, or if you have Google Play or Stitcher, Spotify, Radio Public, whatever, I am all over the place. So, by the way, you leave your reviews and likes and ratings wherever you are, and I'll hear from everybody soon. Take care. Goodbye.